Alright everyone, so we're going to discuss a little bit about Box Cutter here. A lot of you are probably familiar with it, but if you're not, then this tutorial or series of videos is for you. So we're going to go in here and just start with the cube because cubes are the easiest to start with Box Cutter. Now by default, Box Cutter may or may not be enabled. If you press the D key and you see this menu, it's enabled. If not, if the D key doesn't do anything, if it brings up this menu for example, press Alt-W on the keyboard and that'll turn on Box Cutter. So Box Cutter is really easy to work with. There's only a few different things you need to know. So by default, Box Cutter cuts with boxes, right? So if you click on your object you want to cut on and you just click and drag, by default there's this thing called a line box. We're going to turn that off for now. We'll discuss that in a little bit. But by default, if you click and drag, you're going to have this cutter. Now if you release and move down, you can cut through like this. Very simple. Now if you want to execute this command, you can press the enter key or you can click and lock that guy in. Now if you want a little bit more control, what you can do is press the tab key while you're cutting, and now you're going to have these pivot points. You can move this up, you can move this down, you can move this a little bit more manually in 3D space, and this little blue icon down here represents a bevel. If you just pull that, that'll execute a bevel. Now I prefer to press the B key to do a bevel. It's just a little bit quicker, and if you scroll up on the scroll wheel you increase the segment count, and if you scroll down you decrease the segment count, so nothing too complicated. Now up here there's also this thing called a line box, which basically gives you a little bit more control over your cuts. So I don't know, say for example you wanted to cut along this direction rather than in a static direction along one of the axes. Well, if you have line box turned off, you can't do that. It's just in a static direction. But with line box, you can actually turn this on and cut in this direction. You can also hold control to snap it, and you can cut something like this. And all the commands are the same, pull it down, press the B key to bevel, all that stuff. Now with line box, you can also use a wedge cut. So when you're cutting, if you press the W key and pull down, you actually get a nice wedge cut like this, which is pretty cool. Sometimes gets you some more decent looking designs. Now another cool thing you can do with line box is use something called a wedge cut. So if I come in here and cut down and then press the W key, this will enable the wedge cut, which basically goes down at an angle. Now you can also rotate your cutters if this is in the wrong position. So you just come in here, press the R key, then you can just rotate it this way. You can also grab it along the different axes if you prefer. Make all sorts of different designs and just basically get this how you want it to look. All sorts of different functionality. I don't use wedge cut too much, but we do use it a few times in the course, so it can be useful. Now we also have a few different cutters. We have a circle cut and an n-gon cut, and we also have custom cutters, which I honestly don't use ever. You can actually trace out your own custom cutters, but you're not going to really need that in the course, and you probably won't use it too much. Anyways, let's discuss circle cut. Circle cut's really easy. Cuts in circles, as you may have guessed. Now if you press Control D, you get a menu here and you can actually adjust the vertex count on these circles. So say you wanted, barely any vertices on here, you can do that. If you want more vertices, you can click up to 64, and you can also manually put in a number like 100 for example and get a nice smooth circle. There's some other settings in here that we'll discuss in a little bit, but for now just follow along with the cutters. And the last cutter is the n-gon cutter. This one allows you to trace out manual shapes. So if I go into top view here and go to the n-gon cutter, which I'm already in, you can actually trace out all sorts of different shapes like this. Really whatever you want. This one's kind of sloppy, but you get the idea. Let me also show you something else with the n-gon cutter that might be useful to you. If you go up here to where you have this little chain icon and turn it off, this will actually use an n-gon cutter, but give it some thickness. So maybe I cut in here and I press the T key. This will enable solidify, and you can actually get in some thick cuts like this. I know this might be a little bit confusing, but we're going to be hopping right into Box Cutter when we start the course, so I would not stress too much about it. Basically this is all you need to remember. Click, drag, and release to add in a cut. You can press enter, or you can just double click to lock in a cut. You can also press the B key to add in a bevel, So come in here, press the B key, scroll up to add more segments, and then double click to lock it in. And then we also have line box, which like I said gives us some more control over our cuts here. The next one we have is the circular cut. We just come in here, cut with a circle, pull it down, and you can also adjust the vertex count with Control D. Finally, we have the N-Gon cutter, which allows us to trace manual shapes and get cool little cutting designs kind of like this.